Welcome back for another edition of Straight Talk with Joe Vollano. This week, we're going to talk about immigration. We're going to talk about a scandal that's been stewing for the last couple weeks. I haven't really mentioned it because I was waiting for more info to come out, but that has now come out with some hard evidence involving the International Firefighters Union and the MDA, which everybody is fully aware of the Fill the Boot campaign. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to take your phone calls. You can feel free to call the show in 203 679 9610. But let's talk about the Firefighters Union, because that's something that, again, has been brewing for some time, and that is now really percolated to the top. And I'm going to bring something up for you. So we're getting high tech here now. So I'm going to be able to share some info with you guys. And if you're watching on YouTube or you're watching on Facebook, you'll be able to see some of the stuff I'm going to put up here. So what you're seeing here is paybacks from the MDA to the international. I want to make sure everybody understands this is not paybacks to your local firefighters, the guys that are actually out there doing the hard work of trying to raise all these funds to help children. And you would think that that's where all the money was going to. And during an audit, these payments were found. Now, the MDA has absolutely been quiet and refuses to answer any questions regarding these payments that are well over $1 million per year. Firefighters are upset because they're asking, well, why is the union getting this money? This is supposed to be voluntary. These firefighters are out there because they care. You're donating because you care. And now millions of dollars have been funneled back to the union without an explanation. In fact, prior to 2009, they weren't even under the International Fire Union. They were just payments made back. Now, the firefighting union is saying it's for expenses and administrative costs, which should be zero. Because if you see them out there, they're in their fire truck. They're doing it during their workday. They're not getting paid any extra. There's no costs for them to be sitting out there holding the boots. And this is what's got a lot of firefighters very upset. This is what's got me upset. Because since 1984, payments have been made to the International Firefighters Association. These are the things that really need to be talked about and brought to light. Now, am I going to stop contributing to Fill the Boot? Probably not. Because a majority of it does go for a great cause. But why is the unions taking millions of dollars out of that without an explanation? No explanations at all. And the MDA, they need to come out and tell people what's going on. Millions of dollars. That's when I talk about transparency, this is why. This is why transparency is so important. Not only in nonprofits, not only in corporations, not only in government, but everything. Now again, would this have changed your view? Would it have changed whether or not you donate? I would say no. But wouldn't you like to know that the union, who's saying they're volunteering their time and their efforts, really aren't? They're getting paid on the back end? It's troubling. Very troubling. And if there wasn't an audit, this would have never even been found. So make sure when you're given to nonprofits, no matter what nonprofit it is, this just happened that they got caught. Make sure you're asking the question. Make sure you're doing your research to make sure that that money is going to where you think it is. Because now the Firefighters Association has about $79.5 million per year. That's what they bring in from their members. They don't need another $1.4 to $1.9 million from an organization that's trying to help kids. And it's really interesting that the MDA has been silent and refused to answer questions, which makes you wonder, why? What are they hiding, or what are they afraid to say? These things need to be fully investigated, and more answers need to be come out. Now, if you want to read more on this, the Yankee Institute has a great piece on it that I encourage everybody to go back and read. It's by Mark Finch, and I suggest you read it. I'll link it later on to the page so you guys can go. And everything we talk about, I'll now have the ability to link it for you. Because we're gonna go over a lot of information today. And all I know is that I wanted to start with this because this is kind of the theme for tonight, is that when things are happening and things are being found out and people are being caught for doing things, you're going to notice the theme is, let's just ignore it, let's not talk about it, and hope that it just goes away. Because that's what they're hoping for. But I'm not going to let it go away. That's nothing I want to do. So, I suggest everybody reads the article. And again, make your own conclusion. I'm going to give you where I stand on it. But I hope everybody reads it. Because it's very important. So like I said, if you want to call into the show today, it's 203-679-9610. We're going to see if this works. I tested it out earlier. We bought our new fancy machine over here, and it seems to be working pretty well. It took a learning curve, but I think we're ready to really do some great things with the show. And this is just the beginning. So, topic for tonight is immigration and what's going on at the southern border. Because, again, nobody wants to talk about it, and they're hoping if nobody wants to talk about it, that is just not happening. But for years, they talked and blamed Republicans and Trump for doing what? Holding kids in cages. Ladies and gentlemen, guess what's back? It's back. And why is it back? It's back because people are sending their children to the border unaccompanied. Why? Why would they do such a thing? I don't know about you guys. I would never let my small child go unaccompanied to the U.S. border. Sometimes 1,000 miles away. But they're doing it because of the new policies that have been implemented, which is really just removing the Trump policies that got this under control. We didn't hear about this problem. After 2018, we got this under control. And how did we do that? We did it by following the rules, by enforcing our laws. Believe it or not, we are still a country of laws. It's how we keep order. It's how we keep consistency on everything that happens in government. But politics get in the way of keeping that order and that consistency. And this is a prime example. Anyone who thinks that what's going on down at the southern border is not organized by the far left is out of their minds. Now, doing my research this week, I found this. Biden, please let us in. Now, you would see this shirt and think, oh, look, someone made a cute shirt and they're some kind of activist trying to make a point. Until you see this. Until you see this, ladies and gentlemen. Anyone who tells me that this is not organized to overrun our border is out of their mind. This is an organized, well organized run on our border. It happened under Obama. It even happened under Bush. But nothing like 2015 where we had hundreds of thousands. Just last month, we had over 100,000 interceptions with illegal immigrants coming over the border. Now we're gonna call it the way it is. This is happening for multiple reasons. One, corporations love it. Farmers love it because it's cheap labor. So do they want to see an end to this? No, they don't want to see this end. Democrats, they look at it as a voter base. Do you think they want to see this end? They're encouraging it. You have the Biden administration. They won't even call this what it is. They won't even call it what it is. It's a crisis that's going on down at the southern border. Border Patrol, local police departments are being overrun by illegals coming over. I was showed a video, and I wish I could have got the clip to work on the program, but unfortunately, it wouldn't come through. And on this video that was sent to me, which I still think it was trying to prove a point that it never proved. Just nothing did. It did nothing but actually prove the point that I've been saying all along. So, under the Trump administration, when they make contact with illegals or those seeking asylum, they would send them back to Mexico or their country of origin until their hearing or appeals were heard. And maybe 2 minutes into the video, it was showing a woman who had waited 3.5 years to get into America. And she stayed at one of the camps in Mexico. And what she said, or did not say, was very telling. And something Trump talked about for many years when he wanted to do merit-based immigration to some extent. Not fully. But the lady said something very interesting. One, she didn't speak any English, even though she spent 3.5 years trying to get into a country that speaks English. And two, she never made a game plan for what she was going to do when she got here. And her comment was, well, I'm just going to play it by ear. You waited 3.5 years to get into the greatest country in the world that gives you unlimited opportunity, and you're telling me you came up with no game plan for what you're going to do, where you were going to go once you got into this country. And this is something that people, and I don't want to say anti-immigration, because we're not anti-immigration. We're just for immigration the right way. But when you come into the country, we want people to come in that aren't going to be burdens on the taxpayers of the country. And again, 3.5 years to try to get into this country, and you never came up with a game plan, is very disturbing because she's not the only one. She's not. Now, and I'll grant it, we have American citizens who have no game plan and they've been here their entire lives. Granted. But come on. Is this what we're really trying to let into the country? How does it make us a better country? It's costing us billions of dollars a year. So these are the things that we need to address. But again, the White House, they won't even call this a crisis. She slipped today and said it was a crisis, but they said it's a challenge. It's a challenge. Challenging times down on the border. So, if you're a Democrat out there, I want you to call me because I really, really need to know why we allow this to happen or why you want this to happen. So call in 203-679-9610. Because, people say, Republicans are off for the big business. And that's not the way it is anymore. It's not the way it is anymore. You look at the biggest businesses in the country and even in the world, and they all support Democrats now. And they do it for things like this because they want the cheap labor. And Craig, you're absolutely right. Who is going to do the fruit picking and do the slaughterhouses? I got it. I understand it. Does it make it right? No. If there are jobs that Americans won't do, which I still find that to be a farce, then there are other avenues corporations can take to bring people in legally. And if there's a need for it, I'm all for it. All for it. But to have hundreds of thousands organized by left-wing groups to come in is not the way to do it. Trying to shut down ICE from doing their jobs of trying to get felons out of the country, how is that making America safe? It's not. It's just not. We have laws, immigration laws, for a reason. Every other country have immigration laws for a reason. But it seems, as with everything else, our friends on the left only want laws followed that benefit them. And if the law does not benefit them, then to hell with it. And immigration is the biggest one. Open borders is the biggest mistake ever. 15%, and we haven't even, I'm about to get into the COVID side of it. Because 15% of the people coming over have COVID. Because they're being tested. But guess what's happening to them? They're being released into America. I guess COVID doesn't matter anymore? Do we all of a sudden, illegals or people crossing the border are immune? That they don't spread it? Makes no sense. But again, if they don't talk about it, well, then it doesn't exist. If they hide it, it doesn't exist. If you noticed, the major news networks, NBC, CBS, ABC, MSNBC, CNN, they ain't covering this. This is the same thing with the riots. Unless you were watching Fox News or listening to talk radio, you wouldn't even known that Portland was under attack. You wouldn't even known it. Because they're not going to report it. They don't want to report it. Because it makes them look bad. Everybody needs to stay informed. And that's not just listening here, but taking what you hear here and go out there and research it some more. Like I said, I don't want you to just take it from me. There's plenty of information out there. But you need to be informed. And then you need to inform other people. This can't last. Our country doesn't last if this is what we allow. It's that simple. At some point, action needs to be taken. People need to rise up and say something. But again, unless you do your research and you let the media tell you what's going on, you're never going to hear this. You're never going to see it. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this is real. This is real. A picture speaks 1,000 words. There it is. That's everything you need to know about the Democrats' immigration policy in one picture. Now you gotta go ask why. And I tell you, the people that need to worry the most are the working class. Because if you think a corporation won't take someone who's willing to take $5 an hour over someone who's looking like 15, I bet those $15 an hour people should really think about what's going on the southern border. Because their jobs are the ones they're going to be taking. Those entry-level jobs that they want $15 an hour will be taken by these guys who will be willing to take $7. And that's been proven. It's been happening for years. Now the Biden administration is just aspirating that issue, that problem. So, ladies and gentlemen, we got a lot of work to do. And Craig, you know exactly what jobs I'm talking about. I'm talking about your McDonald's. I'm talking about your grocery stores. Talking about, again, your farms, your egg factories. Oh, trust me, I know. That's where they're going. Unless we stop it. Unless we have enough people to do it, to stand up and say enough is enough. At some point, the rule of law has to take over and politics needs to be thrown away. But we'll see what happens. So, someone asked me today. Again, if you have comments on immigration, by all means, throw them in the comments. I'm reading them in real time here. Or you could call in 203-679-9610, and we could have a discussion on why things are happening the way they are. And who's to blame? Because I tell you what, me as a conservative, I know I'm certainly not to blame for it. Are some Republicans to blame? Yeah. There's some that are in the corporation's pocket. But for a conservative, no. Because what's happening to these people on their way up is appalling and tragic. Some don't make it. The cartels are making millions. People are being abused. And again, children are being sent up without their parents to try to get them over the border. That's how desperate they are. Another question I have is, why is the Biden administration just reaching out to these countries like Trump did? Trump said, no. If you're going to allow these people to come up and try to literally invade our country, we're going to cut off funding. We give a lot of aid to El Salvador, Honduras, Mexico, and the other Central American countries. But Biden has already refused to sit there and set rules for immigration. They won't play hardball with these countries. Because, again, they want this. They don't, like I said, they won't even call this a crisis, which is what it is. When they're opening up additional tent cities and detention centers, which, of course, during the Trump administration, they called inhumane. But now, when asked, well, isn't it the same thing? Oh, no. Now all of a sudden, it's all fine and dandy. The hypocrisy, as always in politics, is astounding and disgusting. So, that's where we're stuck at. Now, I know I'm reading the comments on the Facebook page, and listen, Mr. Hansen, who is one of my favorite liberals, you don't need to tell me. I know which jobs they're doing. I know why they're doing them. And if you think that there's people that won't do the messy and hot jobs, you're wrong. You're wrong. And to try to make that as an excuse on why it's okay is definitely not right. I mean, we could say that about anything. Okay, so someone doesn't want to do a job, so therefore it's okay to have hundreds of thousands of illegals to invade the country on the southern border? It's okay? Those rules and laws, just because you don't like them, don't matter anymore? Is that the kind of country we live in? Is that the country you want to live in? I understand America is the greatest country. It's the last place for freedom, where you have the opportunity to do whatever you want. Now, within the rules of law, but you have an opportunity to make your mark. And for those people that come in and do that, that's what the American dream is all about. You know, and I sit there and say, I think a lot of Americans take being an American for granted. They have no idea what it's like to come from those countries. So I have sympathy for them. But there's a process. And there's things you should need to do before you get here. Because when you come over, you're supposed to come into the country and acclimate yourself to that culture. Now, that doesn't mean that you forget your culture. And so, for instance, if you're coming from Mexico, we don't expect you to leave your culture behind. It's something that is welcomed here. But at the same time, as Americans, we're supposed to be self-sufficient. We're supposed to do good for the country. You know, the old JFK, ask not what your country could do for you, but what you could do for your country. That's long gone. That's long gone. Proof is that is just last week. And we discussed the stimulus checks. People don't mind daddy government. They don't. And sometimes I fear that the whole idea and concept of America is going down the drain. It's sad. In times of hardship, in times of struggles, this is usually when Americans step up. I honestly don't see that happening right now. And it worries me. I see way too many people welcoming the government into their lives and being okay with it. You know, and I wasn't even going to talk about this tonight, but the stimulus checks. I'm reading some of these comments on my Facebook page because I'll post things throughout the week just to try to get some conversations going. And people were telling me, well, I don't make enough in my job and it stresses me out. Listen, we're all stressed. I know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to be well off. Just to be poor once again. But determination and drive and the wantingness to do better. This country gives you the opportunity, even when you've been kicked down and back up and kicked back down again, to pull yourself back up. That's what America is all about. If you're not making enough at your job, take advantage of the opportunities to go back to school. There's plenty of grants. There's Pell Grants, Stafford loans, everything you could think of to try to get a better education. You could even do it online now. So this making an excuse that I welcome daddy government because I don't make enough is ludicrous. So then do something about it. Anyone could bitch and complain. But if you're not willing to do anything to change it, change your situation, you have no one to blame but yourself. I could have easily have gone on government assistance. But that's not me. I struggled. Ended up opening up a business that by the grace of God and the great people that are out here in this audience and in the state have embraced it and made it a success. Now, granted, I work a ton of hours. Things that most people would never want to do. I've sacrificed, but because that's what I needed to do. We all need to sacrifice at some point. But again, this country gives you that opportunity. And I understand that's why, and I hope that's why, those hundreds of thousands of people are trying to get here. But this administration is doing them no favors by trying to make an open border. The only thing they're doing is enriching the cartels, putting the immigrants at risk physically and mentally, and doing a huge tax burden on the people of this great country. And that's the bottom line. And again, if you disagree, the number's right there. Phone's right there. By all means, give me a call. and explain yourself. Because this is not going to get any better anytime soon. And there's going to be a tipping point where there's just not going to be enough resources to handle the overflow. And then what happens? How many detention centers do you think we could build? That's not something I want to see happen. So again, I'm going to leave the comments open there. Hopefully we'll get some. Make sure I didn't miss any. So every week I ask people to send me a topic of what they want to talk about. And something that really doesn't get talked about in the media, something that's just interesting. So I love the question I got today. The question was, with everything going on and all the trillions of dollars that the United States is printing, do we see a currency reset coming up? And for people who don't know what a currency reset is, it's when, like right now, the dollar is the world currency. So a reset would be when another country's currency becomes the world currency. Now, can that happen? And there's been plenty of talks about it. Now, when I was in college, I majored in economics. So, when we talked about the gold standard, where is what the United States used to be. So for every dollar of printed money, it was backed by gold. But the problem was, as we started printing more and more money, we couldn't keep up with that amount of gold. So to make it easy for people to understand why people fear a reset is here. Let me get rid of this. This is why people fear a reset. And if you look at stocks have always consistently gone up. And in fact, they go up about anywhere from 15 to 20% per year. If you look at the red line, that's long-term treasury bonds. And that's usually your 20-year bond. And that's basically loans to the government to operate. And you get a promissory note that says, hey, it's going to be worth this much in 20 years. And same thing with your treasury bills, which have been pretty flat. And then you got to the dollar. And you look at the dollar, when we started with the Great Society, and you started seeing that just totally just drop off. Now, this is in thousands of billions. So 100,000 would be a trillion. Just to give you a sense of what this thing is saying. So the problem you have is that the next one, gold, is going down. It has its peaks, has its minus, but it stays pretty flat. And the problem is, the more money you you print, the wider the pink one and the gold one get. The gap gets a lot bigger. Now, the other problem you're also having now is that those large stocks, some of them, now this only goes up to 2016, a lot of them are more foreign countries that might hold some stock holdings here, but could easily be transferred. So people worry about a reset because if right now we print trillions of dollars with no real issue because we have the standard in the world. We are the world standard. But China has made a real run to become the new world currency. Now, will it happen? I think no, not in the short term. But if we keep spending trillions and trillions of dollars, by 2030, yeah, they can. And that's something that Trump talked about because the Chinese love to manipulate their dollar, their money. They use the yen. And when it does, it makes the dollar weaker and makes the yen stronger. And that's something that Trump really tackled and talked about ever since he came down that escalator in 2015. It is a concern that people should have. Anyone who thinks that printing trillions and trillions of dollars is okay doesn't know anything about economics. It's just like at home. You can't print money, so you have to live within your means. The state is finding that out. The towns are finding that out. But your federal government, well, they have the ability to print it. But what happens when you print yourself out of the standard? Well, that's when resets happen. So what would a reset really mean for America? One, inflation would go through the roof. Inflation would skyrocket. You would have superinflation. Hyperinflation is what they call it. So everything you normally buy would be up in prices. Because now companies would have to pay more for their goods, especially for goods overseas. Which, remember, still a lot of our products are made in China. So while, like I said, I don't see a reset happening within the next 9 years or so, but it's still definitely a possibility. And it's something that we need to take care of when we're talking about how much money the government prints. America cannot afford 1.9 trillion plus another 1.8 trillion. And now they're already talking about another stimulus bill that's going to be over 2 trillion. For what? Vaccines are showing that they're making great progress in making them. Getting them out there to the public. And people seem to be taking it pretty well. I've heard of a couple of people who get sick afterwards, but after a day or two, they're fine. So why are we going to spend another couple of $1 trillion? And what are you going to spend it on? Remember, we just spent $1.9 trillion, and only 9% was actually for COVID-related help. The rest of it was just nonsense that you get to pay for. So these are the things, again, you need to make sure you're staying aware on. And it was a great question, so I thank you. I forget who sent it to me. I think her name was Linda that sent it, if I'm not mistaken. And it was a great question because it's definitely something as a conservative that we fear. Because it would be devastating to not only our economy, but to the country as a whole. So, again, thank you for the question. So still, nobody's decided to call in. It's okay. I'll leave the number up there one more time. But next week, share your opinions. Let me know what you guys want to talk about. What's interesting to you? And we'll do it. There is no subject off the table. We talk about everything. Because even if it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about, and most people won't talk about immigration, they're afraid to be called names or being labeled. But by not talking about it, you're not fixing it. And even a little show like this, if it starts the conversation, if it gets the ball going, then it's worth it. People can call me whatever they want. I've been called every name under the book. Nothing phases me anymore. It's a good thing and it's the bad thing. I don't worry about being liked. I say it the way it is. If you disagree, there's the phone number. You come argue your point. But all I know is guaranteed if we stay down the road we're on, America's in trouble. And we're only, 2.5 months into this administration? And things are going to hell in the handbasket. We have a president who has absolutely no idea where he is half the time. For the 4th time today, he's called his vice president the president. Still has not held a news conference yet. Ladies and gentlemen, this should trouble every one of you out there. Now, if you've been listening to me for the last 2 years, this is nothing new. I told you this was going to happen. This is what happened when uninformed voters vote because they're pissed at somebody. This is what we get. We have a man who is not, I don't want to say lost his mind. Oh, no, he did. Yeah, I mean, we'll just call it what it is. He's not running this country. He's the puppet. When he can't come out and answer a simple question, when he's given one of his soft, cuddly little photo ops at a country store, which was a popular video that came out last week, where he's talking with a small business owner, and as soon as he finished, the press started asking questions, and they yelled at them, no questions, and try shutting them up. It's a great video. I'll link it to the page. It's astounding to watch. Love or hate Trump. And Trump was no saint. Far from it. But we didn't elect a saint. We elected someone who is willing to get things done. But when you have a president who can't even take a question after a photo op, that should be concerning. Because, like I said, love or hate Trump, he never shied away from a question. And this is from a man who knew everyone in the press was out to get him. I am worse than Nixon. And I think that's when all this really started. You look at where the media started and where they're at. It really started back in Nixon when the media really lost their objectivity, because you had two young reporters that literally took down a president. And rightfully so. Don't get me wrong. What he did was wrong. And he got caught. So great job on the press for doing their job. But now everyone wants that notoriety. Because listen, those to this day, those two journalists are still gods in the eyes of every journalist. And what journalists today would not love to say they took down a president? And God, they friggin' tried for 4 years to take Trump down. But there was nothing to take him down. They tried manufacturing stuff. But at the end of the day, there was nothing there. And he never, again, I don't want to make it seem like I'm standing here, just praising Trump all the time, but let's call it the way it is. He stood up every day to the people that were there to take him down. And he answered their questions. And he did it honestly. And he did it, maybe not always in a polite way. But hell, do you blame the guy? I don't. So, Mr. Saron, I'm reading your comment there. Say the lie to believe the lie, never deny the lie. Well, explain what the lie is. You caught my attention. Same thing. I have two of my liberal friends on, but yet I don't see that phone ringing. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we live in the greatest country on the face of the earth. And if we don't appreciate it, if we don't cherish it, we don't look to preserve it, it will be gone. Ronald Reagan said it best. We're only one generation from extinction. Freedom. Your liberties are one generation away from extinction. That's very true. And yeah, Craig, you don't see conservatives calling in because I think you're hearing it. I don't think they need to. I mean, they could call and tell me that they agree with me. And to use platitudes that everything that came out of his mouth was lies, like what? I'll challenge anybody. Let me know. What was lies? Was a lie that we had the greatest economy since Ronald Reagan? With a GDP at 4%? Was that a lie? Was it a lie that they manufactured stories to try to bring them down? Was that a lie? It was proven true. They manufactured it with a dossier paid for by the opposition party. And they used it as credible intel, which even the FBI said was false. But we could talk about the future, but we also must remember the past. And if you don't learn from the past, how are you ever going to succeed in the future? So again, my liberal friends could use platitudes and quotes that. But at the end of the day, if you're not getting specifics, that's all they are. It's just talk. And we are rounding the corner with COVID. And you could, again, thank that to Donald Trump. Operation Warp Speed. I'd rather you just say thank you. But of course, you'll never hear that from our friends on the left. And it's interesting why. I would think that everybody would have been very happy that the country was doing well back then. And does anyone find it interesting that we're going back down again? Just look at the policies that have been enacted. When you had Ronald Reagan, you had tax cuts. You saw a booming economy. You had regulations reform. But again, you had a booming economy. You had more money coming into the coffers. Obama put more regulations. And what'd you see? You saw a loss in revenue. When you put higher taxes, you see a weaker economy. I mean, We can debate who it benefits, who it doesn't, in the short term and in the long term. But the proof is in the pudding. Facts don't lie. Obama said 1.5 GDP growth was the new normal. Now, if you're a conservative, you knew it's BS. And then Trump came in and he told you beforehand what needed to happen to get the economy going. He won, he implemented it, and it took off. So again, you can sit there and bash them. You can sit there and try to take them out. But results don't lie. And now we have Biden, who told you what he was going to do. He was going to raise your taxes. He was going to put more regulations on. Obviously, open up the borders. What do you think that was going to do? We lived it in '08. From '08 to 2015, we lived it. And it was horrible. And now we get to relive it all over again. And it's happening faster than it did back then. Like I said, we're only, 2 months in? And look what's going on. At some point, something's got to give. And what's going to happen when, again, we run out of money? That's when your reset comes in. And then we're in real trouble. So hopefully you guys have a lot to think about over the next week. And again, if you have any questions, and you could go ahead and print them there. You could type them. Or again, reach out. And anything else you want to talk about in the future, hit me up on social media. We have our YouTube page, Straight Talk with Joe Vollano. Make sure you like and subscribe, please. It helps the channel out. And we will be back here next Thursday, 7 p.m. as always, with another great show. I hope you guys find it as a great show. I think we got a lot of the issues resolved. So I hope everybody's watching on YouTube. I see it is live on Facebook. So all those issues are gone. Like I said, we're going to be doing some interviews. And so we'll be playing those back. Hopefully next week we'll get our first interview. We're going to have some guests coming on the show. So we got a lot of great things set up for the show. And again, we could only make it better if you guys let us know what you want to see. Because if you're not entertained and you're not interested in it, then this will be a pointless exercise in me sitting here and just talking. And I know some people think I like to hear myself talk. Paul still wants to talk about UFOs. I will tell you, Paul, I hear you. And I am trying to find someone that could come in and talk to us about UFOs. Because I know they probably beamed you up at some point and put it in your head that you just needed to talk about them. But we'll do. We'll try to make that happen. But it's been a little difficult. Tack and morals. What do you want to talk about? Let's talk about tack and morals. That'd be an interesting conversation. You got to give me a little bit more specific, though. Because that could bring us in all sorts of different directions. So, guys, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys for joining us. I have a really great time doing these. I really find them fun to do. I want to get a little more engagement. I'm hoping that now that we have all these little issues fixed, I'll start sharing this page a little bit more, and hopefully we'll build the audience up. But I do thank all of you for being here every week. You don't know how much I appreciate it. I'm humbled by it. And I just hope I could provide you guys with a good show every week. So any way I can make it better, let me know. And until next week, God bless you. God bless this great country, because it is. It is the greatest country on earth. So I hope everyone appreciates it, respects it, and does their part to just make it a little bit better. I love you. God bless. And I'll see you guys all next week.